Howdy campers, Jeremy Wright here. Thanks for joining me today. I'm doing another tank talk, and today it's going to be on tank F, like Foxtrot. This is my 50-gallon Asian tank, and you can see really the system starts up at the ceiling. There's a 4-foot shop light. This is like a Walmart brand. I think it's Hyper Tough. 5,000 lumen at 6,500 Kelvin. 4-foot shop lights just happen to be very, very good for growing plants, even down to the depths of this. There is another light on this tank, which is a Phoenix, just a Phoenix planted lamp. Nothing really special about it. I actually got that one used from a friend. But let's talk about the tank. This was an Asian-inspired tank. There are certainly guppies, because everybody knows guppies are from Asia, right? Guppies are not from Asia, but yeah, this is my guppy tank. And it has an Asian theme. So the plants below the water's surface are Asian. Many of those above the water's surface, American plants, American plants, American plants, more American plants. Oh, there's an Asian plant over there, or maybe from India, but kind of cheating above the water line. Let me show you this. This is probably important. This is one of the more notable aspects of this tank. Large hang-on back filter. I think it's a Marineland Emperor 350 or something. One of the large things that used to have a couple of bio wheels on the front, and it had a cover. I removed the bio wheels. They're just not there. I removed the carbon cartridges and filter material from the filter itself, and I filled it with lava rock and hydroton. And from there, there's a nice place for roots to anchor. Let me see if I can get my hand in here. Yeah, see, I'm actually tugging on this plant. This is a Syngonium plant, and it's just not moving. Aroid type stuff. Tradescantia, I think there are 3 types of Tradescantia growing in the top of this plant. That's actually one of my, top of this tank, I should say. Tradescantia is one of my favorite groups of plants. Don't know why, they just are. They happen to do well in aquarium settings. 2 other Tradescantias that I got from some plant. Actually, I got both of those from the same plant friend at a plant swap about not quite a year ago. So let's have a look at the aquarium itself. And I'm sorry for the glare, cat door and the glare right behind me, right there. So again, 50-gallon tank. I got this from my dad, who was given it by a friend of mine who said, Jeremy would like this. Sure enough, I did. So I have rebuilt and resealed this used tank. I went around and put all new silicone. I built a new rim for it, and you can see this is a custom wooden rim. It is stained black. The top rim I actually didn't replace. It was in pretty good condition, so I just elected to leave it as it was. It's a little dirty right now, but you can see I've got some plants with clips. The clips aren't on the plants. The clips are just on the rim, and they help hold the plant in place. Mexican petunia, pothos, another aroid, and just some common stuff. Begonias, that's not really in the tank. Those are just house plants that can tolerate having wet feet. Because they can tolerate having wet feet, they're not going to rot away if we put them in the top of a hang-on back filter and grow them aquaponically, like I was showing you over here. So that's where a lot of the health of this aquarium comes from. And I pretty frequently have to come through and trim dead leaves and stuff off the top of this tank, because there's enough up here that it's constantly dropping leaves down into the tank. So I try and get the ones that will just easily pull off. Others I have to come in with scissors and do a snip. But frequently that happens. All cool. But I had a problem with this tank. There was so much stuff growing up above it, I had to remove a lot of the foliage recently. There was a plant that we call a Chinese evergreen that was big, like dominating this area. And between that stuff and this stuff up here, it was really shading that 4-foot shop light. And there wasn't nearly enough light getting down to the lower reaches of this aquarium. In addition to that, the pogostemon, let me get to a different angle so we're not looking at so much glare. The pogostemon stellatus, which is this plant growing up through here, I had to remove about 2/3 of it. I had to remove probably half of the Rotala rotundifolia, which is this plant kind of growing up center through here. There's some more Rotala down in this area, so that's what it looks like just when it's grown close to the surface, gets clipped and then planted back down in here. So I really had to open up a lot of the light that could get into this tank. I'm going to try and stand in a position where there's less glare. I have no idea if this is going to work. Kinda, whatever. So here's a view of pogostemon, which is this plant, and a lot of roots from the pothos. Some people call this devil's ivy. It's very common houseplant. It happens to do really well in aquariums, both submerged and immersed, where it's partially underwater. Begonias really don't tend to do well in my aquarium, so it's in a special little place by itself. So just in case it gets sick or something, it's not going to contaminate the rest of the tank. But I might get brave and stick it in, I don't know, maybe another thing like that. Different system, smaller system. So the guppies in here, I just saw one that was looking terrible. I pulled out a few from one of my hospital tanks, culls really, and dropped them back down in here just to see what would happen. There's one. So, well, I saw one. Not him. There was a much rougher looking gup down in here a second ago. But going back, this is an Asian tank. So we've got Buddha hanging down in the bottom, Java ferns, cryptocorynes. So let's look at some of the crypts. I'm not sure what the one way out here on the side is. It's not even a crypt, it's an aquaponic, I do believe. And in fact it is. So now that I know what that plant is, I'll be moving it over to an African tank or maybe a Madagascar tank. I got that very, very, very small. It almost looked like a, a tissue culture. And now that I can really identify the plant, I'll move it. Others, not that way. I thought that little plant was a cryptocorin, like this. This is Crypt Windy Brown. The one beside it, uvulata, I believe, cryptocorin uvulata. And it's got these nice tall bits that we're trying to reach up and find the surface. And you can see some of them certainly have found the surface. Some of those are roots also, but others you can see actually originate down from this plant as they were reaching up. Another cryptocorin. Behind that, some Java fern, some dead fronds. That's okay, I just leave them in there. There are snails in here that eat that stuff. I don't generally pull out dead leaves from the bottom of this aquarium. Others I do. I sort of let the leaf litter just float around the tank. And that's not something you have to do. It's not really adding that much nutrient or anything. It's just, I sort of appreciate the jungle-y nature of things. So going back into this area, we're looking at more crypts, and then a standard Java fern, a Marimo moss ball, more crypts, and starting in this area, there's a little bit of hairgrass, dwarf hairgrass, that's been growing over here for a while. It's been spreading out ever so slowly, And the reason for that slow growth is probably low lighting, because this is a tall tank. Again, that's, I'll put my arm in here as a measure, but yeah, it's taller than my forearm. Moving back to this side of the tank, we were looking at dwarf hairgrass. There's a little bit of moss down in here. That's probably Christmas moss. Oh, that's cool. This is an El Nino fern right here. El Nino fern, pretty cool. Bulbitis heteroclita. More crypt windy brown. This plant here is a green myriophyllum. It should be growing a little more upward. All the same, whatever. Behind that, Rotala rotundifolia. And this big grass-like thing is a plant that the aquarium trade calls an onion plant, or an onion bulb plant. It's going to grow all the way across the tank. It begins down here, grows all the way up and across the tank, as I showed you. Now, something else critical to all of my tanks, I use pre-filter sponges on everything. Downside to pre-filter sponges, you do have to take them out every once in a while and clean them. Good thing is, you don't have to clean out the rest of your filter. You just clean this bit out. I generally find that a little bit of algae grows on these. You do need to, and let's see if we can, yeah, there's some algae growth on it. Right there, little fern that just drifted off, and it has caught on, it looks like a bit of pogostemonn that's been nibbled on. But that's really common. Those guys get loose and do their thing. Looking back to the top of the tank, there's a bit of duckweed, but it never really takes hold in this tank because there's so much water. Surface movement, I should say. Over here where it's a bit more still, it congregates sometimes, but I just grab it by hand and toss it. I've enjoyed this tank. It's been really easy to care for. This is my colony of half black red guppies. I probably need to come through and grab some culls, some of the guys that aren't looking too hot. I shouldn't have thrown a few of the culls in here, but they were living with a blind cave tetra, and I really didn't want them competing against him. I've got other space to put him now, but I just threw him back in here a week or so ago and thought it won't be that bad, and then I realized that was probably a bad idea. So I'll go ahead and remove the culls. I don't think any of them are sick. They're just not attractive. They're not the DNA that I want in this tank. So here's an example. That guy's just not fantastic. He's got buddies that look better. Here's another one that probably came out of the cull tank. You can just see his tail. Not all that great compared to some of the others. Oh, that guy's looking cool. Albino rainbow shark minnow. They're in the carp family. You can tell that they're sort of similar in body shape to goldfish, and they've got barbels. So those guys can be sort of territorial. He tends to dominate an area toward the back of the tank. But I like him or her. This fish has been in my systems for a couple of years. I got this one as an adult, so I have no idea how old it is. I would guess probably in the 4-year range, maybe older, but that's a pretty old shark minnow there. It's one of these and red-tail shark minnows were some of the first fish that I remember keeping as a kid. These things, angelfish, badass guppies, platies, mollies, swordtails, little catfish. That's the stuff that I grew up doing. We're approaching the 15-minute mark, guys, so thanks for sticking with me. If you enjoy seeing aquarium videos and just someone chatting about it, explaining what's going on in those, that's what I try to do every couple of weeks in a tank talk special. In between those, lots of other stuff: cats, gardening, goofy stuff, and other aquarium stuff. If you enjoy that stuff, give me a like or subscribe. I would appreciate it. I'm trying to grow my channel. Share if you like. I would sincerely appreciate it. Buddha down here might appreciate it also. The fishies would, because you can tell they just don't have any friends. They're hanging out up here without any friends at all in the world. They need you. They need your love and support. Give them a like. Subscribe to these fishies, and you'll make their world better.